Good evening, everyone. We have a fantastic session in store for you all as we welcome our presenter, Penny Pareja. Penny is not new to Teachers Tribe International community. She had been enlightening us through her knowledge and expertise in PYP. She is a teacher and has trained many educators on the subject of agency and PYP. So sit back, relax, and welcome Penny.
Hello, good evening, and good afternoon from Spain. I hope you are all ready to enjoy and to share experiences and knowledge because I don't think I have the key for everything, but at least I'm going to share what I do and how I do it. Thank you, Anila, for having me again, and I hope we will enjoy the session. Basically, what I'm going to talk about is how to promote agency in the PYP in different age groups and basically with bilingual students, which is my background. As I said, I don't have all the answers, but I have the answers that have worked for me so far. And that's what I hope I can share with you and what you can apply. The first question that comes to my mind when someone talks about agency is why agency is important for us. Because if you know me, I always want to know why things are important both for learners and for teachers, because I think we are on the same team. According to this definition, you can read here, a student agency is a belief system that our actions have an impact. Students who have agency feel valued by their teachers because their identities, histories, and differences are embraced. That is something that is going to lead all the little talk I'm going to give today. Because I think that giving students agency, we make them learn. Student agency is ownership. When I started in PYP, which was in 2019, I was really struck by the concept of a student agency because they told me that a student agency was when students were the owners of the learning. So for me, this sentence is the key. Here, I'm going to share two slides. The first one is by Susan Powers, and you can find her under the name PYP Teaching Tools on Instagram. And the other one is by Trevor Mackenzie, whose books are like the Bible for me and have been like the Bible for me. This first one slide, you can find it in Susan Powers' webpage, and you can find lots of tools. And you can see the difference between passive learning and active learning. Passive learning is what we were doing before with learners. Learners went to a school, they read the text, they did what we told them to do, they wrote notes, and then they reviewed the notes. And then they had a test, and that was it. Active learning is what we get with agency. They go to school, they analyze the text, they make decisions by themselves, they write notes, they answer problems, they compare, they contrast, and they found connections. And the key to everything, they reflect on what they learn. They are the ones that do self-assessment. So these little points of the list are the ticks you need to bear in mind when you're teaching your children and your students. This is the other slide. This is the one by Trevor Mackenzie. I hope you're familiar with his sketches because they are like the world. They are all over my class. They are all over my computer, and I love them because they are really inspiring. This one says, learner agency is out of this world. I have it in my class. My kids know the astronaut story, and it gives you another list of ticks to get done when you are teaching. It's from the point of view of the student again, but it's also for us teachers to bear in mind. Agency is having a genuine voice in my assessment of my learning. And it's also for us teachers, because we also need to be assessed. Showing and explaining the thinking in different ways. You're going to see that later with some examples I'm going to provide. Deciding how I want to share my learning. Doesn't depend on the age. They can all do it. And growing into the person I want to be. We give them the tools to grow, not only to learn. Then on the other side, having my questions shape my learning, exploring my wonderings, curiosities, and patience in school, knowing my strengths and stretches as a learner. This one is really important. Also for us to know our strengths and stretches as teachers, and genuine decision making. As I said, I'm going to explain agency from the point of view of my students this year, and I'm going to share with you our experience developing agency and the tools they needed to strengthen their agency. I've been telling you, this is the way I understand my learners have to be, and that we as teachers have to empower the learners and make them understand that they have an important role. They must feel loved, they must be important, they must feel capable. How can we do that? Let's see. This is a little summary of everything I've been saying. We need to make them feel capable, important, and cherished. They are all the same. We all love them to bits. They can all do it. We need to be passionate, make our love for learning contagious. So the teachers have to be first learners and then teachers. And if we are not passionate educators, this is not going to work. And we need to share their goals and connect with the students, get to know them. We need to know what they like. We need to know what's their favorite thing to do. We need to know what interests them. And we need to give them freedom. We don't have to be scared. It's not going to be a disaster. Well, it might be at some point, but disasters lead to learning sometimes. The best learning situations and outcomes are dramatic situations, disaster, chaos. But that's when learning happens. As always, I like to give the background. I like to give the scenario. First of primary, as many of you know, this year I'm in first of primary, PYP1. They are 5 and 6 year olds. They are bilingual, but they are more fluent and confident in Spanish because it's their mother tongue. Although some of them are bilingual because they come from other countries or because their parents are from another country, but they have been raised and born in Spain. And the example I'm going to use here is for our second unit of inquiry. My house is my home. The transdisciplinary theme was where we are in place and time. Some students still didn't read or write. They are reading and writing now. We've made progress. And some students have special needs, but they all do the same. How do we promote agency? This unit in particular was focused on encouraging collaborative group work and getting a final product, a summative assessment, planned by students with teacher as facilitator. And collaborative group work in this particular unit was supposed to promote a student agency. In the first unit, we have tried to promote inquiry. And in this second unit, we were more focused on try to develop a student agency. Now that I've given you this scenario, this is what I had in mind, this little poster. Set advantageous goals, initiate action towards those goals, reflect and revise, and internalize self-efficacy. This is what I wanted my students to be able to do at the end of the unit, when the final summative assessment was done. I think it's very important for us as teachers, as I said before, to have a goal in mind and to try to revise and reassess that goal during the whole process to see if we have been really successful developing that agency in our students. Our goal, a summative assessment that shows student agency. Number one, students after the provocation activity were grouped into teams. As I said, collaborative work was the key, collaborative work, group work. Each team was assigned a landform in which they have to build a house. They have to choose a role in their group depending on their abilities. Students were given the info and the vocabulary they needed to start their learning journey. The teacher was a facilitator. And work was fragmented into steps, so it was easier for them to follow. That's very important. You always have to adapt what you want them to do to their possibilities so they feel they are capable of doing it on their own. How was the beginning? As we all know, beginnings are always hard. The students found it very hard to start working in groups collaboratively. They all wanted to do the same thing. They all wanted to be the bosses. You know how 6-year-olds can be. Well, and also older students. They needed teacher support to get the info necessary at the beginning. And here, we as teachers need to be flexible but firm and very patient. Because if we believe in them, they will do it. We used a field trip to set up groups to do the tuning activity. This is the field trip. We went to a place on a city near our own, in which they were able to build their own house by themselves, and they already had the groups they had to work in later on in the project. So that was the first contact they had with group work. They were working in teams, they were working collaboratively, and it was kind of nice. First step, the process starts. As I said, the group work was very structured. So the students were now in 4 groups, and they were assigned a landform or an area. They have to start by choosing the name of their group and drawing the landform assigned. As you see, the title is My House Area Is, My Group Is, and they had to choose a name. One group was the farmers, the other group was the super group. Depending on what they decided, they had to vote for the name. And they were architects and planners. For example, one of the areas was the desert. They had to draw a desert. These little papers, I made them with Canva designs. I'm a very big fan of Canva. And it was just to keep them a focus, to give them a structure on their learning. Then, as you can see, the students had to choose the materials for their future house, depending on the landform. Agency started here because they had to make the transdisciplinary connections with their immediate reality. For example, we live in a place which is near the beach, and they knew that if they had the coast landform, they couldn't use the same materials as if they lived, in the mountains. They needed lighter materials. They might put solar panels. I don't know. So they used transdisciplinary connections with their immediate reality. And as you can see there, we incorporate as well learner profile attributes. We are architects, reflective, and open-minded. Students were given a clear goal, a learning objective and target. Build a house with all the data compiled. They could bring materials from home. They could ask the teacher for materials. Ongoing feedback was given, so they could modify the plan if needed, and creativity was encouraged. We made a little poster, as you can see in the photo, with materials for building. And we put all the materials that they decided they needed for the different kinds of houses in the different kinds of landforms. So that mural was for the whole class to look at and to learn the vocabulary. They also could bring materials from home, and we set up a little area in the class, a little corner, in which they could go, touch the materials, decide if they needed them or not for their house. And they could also ask me for materials. So basically, I just spent 1 week getting things from everywhere, basically. But we had lots of fun. As you can see, creativity is always encouraged. It's the key to learning. Next step. Finally, a house is not a home if it's empty. So they had to create a family who lives in their house. And obviously, the family needs to have jobs, pets, ECT adequate for the area they live in. It's not the same if a family lives in the mountains, that if a family lives in the desert, that if a family lives, I don't know, in a forest. So as you see, we have again transdisciplinary connections and cooperative learning. There was a group that decided that as they lived in the desert, they could be archaeologists. And other ones that they decided that as they lived in the mountains, they could be farmers. Whereas if they lived at the beach, they couldn't be farmers. So learning was happening. And as you can see, the key concept there is incorporated too, is perspective. This was our learning journey. This was the beginning. And here's another little diagram I like. Learner agency, choices, social emotional learning, metacognition, self-determination, very important to empower our learners, learning environment, learning ownership, social context, and subjective experiences. All the slides and diagrams I'm sharing obviously are not mine, but they inspire me. And depending on the activity I'm doing or the unit of inquiry, I use one or the other, as I said, to do the little ticks on my agency journey. I think it's very important, and I really recommend that you do the same. This is the final, well, it's not the final. This is the outcome of what I was telling you about. As you can see, we have little papers, we have little post-it notes with little reflections that we glue on our papers. And that's what we will need for the summative assessment. As you can see in the picture I've shared, who can live in my house? We have the mountains, and we have little post-its with houses that say different things that they have found out. For example, we need bricks for a wall, we need diggers, architects, little bits of pieces they were compiling, their thoughts because they were starting to write. This one is very good and I love it. That's what I've put it. And it's from the group Landforms. The name of the group was Landforms. And that is a list of the materials they needed for their house. And as you can see, it's really detailed. They need flowers, they need wood, and they made a little list that was kind of cute and really showed the effort they were making and how interested they were. These are more outcomes from different groups and more materials. And this is another little reflection work we did in which they had different kinds of homes, not the ones they were designing, but different kinds of homes. And they were given the material, and then they had to reason why that material was used. For example, the igloo. The igloo is made of compact snow, and they decided that there is a lot of snow, and the snow sticks and it is warm. That's what they thought, because they found out through a book that when you go into a igloo, it's warm, it's not cold, and they were really struck by it. And that was like a little way of making them go further in their knowledge and try to think more about it. How they did it, they were given freedom to go to the school library to look at books, and they were given freedom to bring books from home. So they could read them. And they could read them in English or in Spanish, in any language they wanted, because the important thing was the knowledge, not the language. I know you've seen this astronaut before, but I wanted to share it again. I just want you to take a look at it and to reflect on how many things you've seen so far from the astronaut. We've had having my questions shape my learning because they made questions before starting. They make questions to me, asking me from materials or for resources. They made questions at home. They made questions for themselves. They were exploring their wonderies, curiosities, and passions in a school because they were given freedom to design. They were knowing their strengths and stretches as learners because the ones that couldn't write or read were the ones drawing or compiling things or just looking at materials. There was genuine decision making when they were choosing materials and they were choosing the kind of home and designing. They were having a genuine voice in assessment because with the little post-it notes you've seen that had a house, they were writing the reflections. They were showing and explaining their thinking in different ways because they were drawing, they were writing, they were talking between them. They decided how they want to share their learning. And little by little, they were growing. So more or less, all the ticks were done. And for me too, because I was quite scared at the beginning and I didn't think they were capable of doing it without driving me crazy, but it went quite well. Okay, so before the summative assessment, I always like to stop before the summative assessment and do self-assessment with the students because it's also good for me and I can keep it as formative assessment for myself as a teacher. I planned 2 activities individual, so learners could reflect first on their learning and then on their strengths and stretches of their collaborative group work. That was new. That was an idea we had, me and my workmates, and I decided to put it into practice. I reviewed with them and I also made sure that they had all the materials they needed for the final project. Let them decide how they want to do it and help them. But first, I'm going to present to you the 2 activities. The first one, activity 1, self-reflection about learning. Students reflect and revise. This is individual and it has to be done right after the planning activities. You know, the ones we have seen about landforms, materials, house, and family. Because they are little and because it's always better to review before everything has finished with little ones, well, also with any students. It's a Canva design again I've made, and I gave it the shape of a house because in every unit of inquiry I'm in, I like to design the worksheets and activities with the same theme as the unit of inquiry has. As you can see, there are 2 little post-it notes, my favorite thing and what I learned. My favorite thing for this student, for my little Nico, was villages and the cities. The difference between village and cities and dunes. As you can see, he's drawn the desert dunes. And what did he learn? He learned the cities and the villages, the difference. He learned my house area, you know, what's in a house and how you design the house, and to work in groups. That was really cute. So he's learned how to work in groups. Then you can keep that and it's formative assessment for you and for the student portfolio. And it's really useful. You can see more examples here. And in one of them, you can see a red writing by me, but it's because this one has written everything phonetically. So in case I didn't understand later, I translated it into proper English. But as you can see, when he couldn't write, he was drawing. So alternatives are given and they are capable of doing it, of communicating. Activity 2. This activity proved to be really, really interesting. And I wasn't very sure about it at the beginning, I have to say. It was self-reflection about group work and aspects to improve about the group work. This activity promotes student self-awareness and perseverance because it gives them weaknesses and stretches of their group work and what they need to improve. Here you can see the group reflections. One of them, as you can see, is incomplete because he didn't know what to say about what he didn't like about group work, but the other one is complete. And in the other one, you can see that he didn't like group work because sometimes it was very hard to work together and they shouted at each other. I think this was quite nice for them. And as they are very small, they are not ashamed of sharing what they think about their workmates. So it created a really nice discussion and we got some really nice tips for our future group works. Now the summative task. We are architects. In the summative task, we encourage student agency and critical thinking, both things. It was time to put our work into practice, to make it real. How did they start it? They really surprised me because they wanted to start with a whiteboard. And on the whiteboard, they made their planning. They were really serious. They had all the papers they have used, as you can see. So they had all the information and they had the whiteboards. Agency, decision making on how to share their learning and showing their thinking in various ways, plus transdisciplinary connections, solar panels. Here you can see what I mentioned at the beginning. I couldn't stop because I was really proud of them. They show agency because they use their whiteboards to make a final design instead of having only the papers. They were showing their thinking in various ways, and they make a transdisciplinary connection because they decided that solar panels, as the ones we have at the school and in some houses around our area, were the trick to have eco houses. And we are talking about 6-year-olds. So it's amazing. And you can see here, solar panels is written in Spanish, but it's there on the top. But you can see that all the other parts are written in English. So it was a fantastic moment for me. What can I say? Planning together and exploring their curiosities. They brought all kinds of materials, as you can see. The class was a mess, but it was a happy mess. I believe that a class which is tidy is not a class who is learning. So I love these messes. You can see another whiteboard, just for you to have a look that we have different levels in class. All of them are not super trooper, but they are all super. And you can have a look at the mess. Here, planning together, exploring their curiosities. That little house you can see with the sticks was made by a student who went on a weekend with Granny and decided to make it with his Granny. And he brought it to class to show his friends. So his friends had ideas. And then on the other side, you can see more mess. Sand, rocks, sticks, land, everything. It was amazing. They were deciding how they wanted to share that learning, and they were delving into their passion with freedom. Here, I wasn't a facilitator. I was just observing because they didn't need anything. They could do it by themselves. So I was just there writing notes, taking photos, and evidencing the learning. Oops, sorry. Here. As you can see, not everybody decided to use materials. Sorry again. On one side, you can see that they were using real life stuff like wood, sticks, screws, everything. But on the other side, you can see a house they made with paper because they didn't want to use anything. As I said, complete freedom. Self-determination. I like this example because I don't think any teacher will think that, but if you take a look at it, it looks like it's nothing, right? But this group did not have the materials they needed, so they look for alternatives through creativity and genuine decision making. As you can see, they have a stick and they have written wood on it, sorry. So they are imagining it's the roof. And then they have cork, but in fact, it's not cork. In fact, it's an egg container, and they have decided it's cork. And they have a piece of plastic and they have written glass. So that's the alternative. They decided to do it, and it was self-determination. They were determined to build their house. That's how they did, and they made a list of materials. As my PYP supervisors like to call it, this was a eureka moment. Learning happened in a wonderful eureka way. Students, little by little, felt comfortable, being creative and setting their own goals for learning. Group work proved to be the key, and the teacher only had to give ongoing feedback and make the right questions, open questions. Like, why is that like that? What do you want to do with that? I like it. Can you explain what it is to me? Without giving the answer. Guiding them little by little, trusting them, and just being there, making them believe that everything they did was important and was worthy. And it was amazing. And with this, we had finished our summative assessment, but one student and his family decided to bring to class a building game made of cardboard. And we had a last activity with total freedom in which we built what we wanted using our learned knowledge. I just wanted to close my presentation with this because I think it's very representative on what student agency is and also on how families are a key on this and in PYP. So this is it for today. I just want people to bear in mind that the students need to feel valued and they are always capable of more than we think. And then the more we make learning visible and meaningful, the better. Thanks a lot for having me today.
Thank you, Penny, for
Thank you,
sharing that
Anila.
story. And we saw most of the elements of agency present there. And I could really see how it happens and it was fantastic to know that how in one inquiry, in one unit of inquiry, you were able to tick off most of them.
Yeah, it's the tick, it's the list. You need a list
Yes.
and you go ticking.
We're grateful for you to share all the learning that you have with us. As a
Thank
token
you.
of appreciation, we would like to present you with the certificate of recognition for your outstanding contribution to our personality for our professional development. Just a second. Sorry. Here you go.
Thank you.
And to all our presenters here, you can also earn a certificate like the Penny did by filling up the form which is there in the chat. You can go through it, fill it up, and you can earn a certificate of participation. Thank you very much. I hope you all have wonderful evening and restful night. Thank you for being here. See you
Thank you,
again.
everybody.
Yes, see you again.
Bye. See you.